All right, somebody read 1 through 9, please.
You should know this, Timothy, that in the last days there will be very difficult times. For people who love only themselves and their money, they will be boastful and proud, scoffing at God, disobedient to their parents, and ungrateful. They will consider nothing sacred. They will be unloving and unforgiving. They will slander others and have no self-control. They will be cruel and hate what is good. They will betray their friends, be reckless, be puffed up with pride, and love pleasure rather than God. They will act religious, but they will reject the power that could make them godly. Stay away from people like that. They are the kind who work their way into people's homes and win the confidence of vulnerable women who are burdened with the guilt of sin and controlled by various desires. Such women are forever following new teachings, but they are never able to understand the truth. These teachers oppose the truth, just as Janus and Jambres oppose Moses. They have depraved minds and counterfeit faith, but they won't get away with this for long. Someday everyone will recognize what fools they are, just as Janus and Jambres. Don't know how to say their names.
They're not. Okay. All right. If you look at your papers, question 1, how does 1 through 4 compare to today? So I read through there those while people were listening last week, and most people agreed that pretty good description of today, how things are today. If you go through the Bible, all the Gospels, toward the end where Jesus was teaching his final lessons to his disciples, he said things very similar. With Matthew 24 and 25 being the most comprehensive description that Jesus gave. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John gave shorter versions of it. If you go through the epistles, every one of them talk about the final days except for 2. And if you go through the prophets, every single one of them have a passage describing the final days of human history. So it's a theme throughout the Bible that can't be ignored. It is comprehensive. Right after the law, all the prophets referred to it in some way, shape, or form. A lot of you don't have a clear perspective of it. How many were born after 1970?
Everybody but you, Bill.
Well, I was born in the 1940s.
Hey, John, you're what, 69 and a half?
I was born in 70.
You were what?
I was born in 70.
In 70, okay. Well, you don't have a clear perspective of it either. It all began to fall apart in the 60s with the hippie movement, and things began to get liberal, and things began to fall apart. Now, I was born in the 40s, and I was born at a time where we had a house with 2 doors and no keys. We never locked our doors. The windows were always open. Nobody had air conditioning back then, so the windows were always open. And somebody'd walk up on the porch and they'd say, "Hey, anybody in there?" And you'd say, "Yeah, come on in." And they'd just open the door and walk through the door. You know, we literally did not ever have a key. I never unlocked my door when I got home from school. You just walked in the door, whether there was anybody there or not, and nobody messed with anything. 2 things were sacred when I was a kid. Nobody touched a kid, and nobody touched the church. All the church doors were open. You could walk in. If you didn't have a place to sleep, you could sleep on the floor at night. If you wanted to go in and worship or pray or do whatever you wanted to do, you could do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Nobody locked the church in, and nobody touched anything in the church. I don't know how many times we've been vandalized out there, just in the last couple, 3 years. I mean, they've stole our tables, they've stole our chairs, they've tore down our signs, they've torn down our playground equipment and left it laying in a pile.
Air conditioners, air conditioners, don't forget those. Park benches.
They stole both our air conditioning units. It's almost to the point where you kind of feel like you need to put a chain on the door, not just lock it, because nothing's sacred anymore. Now, when I was a kid, I saw what it used to be, and I saw what it is now. So I've got a clear perspective of what has happened since when it was good and when it is now. You guys don't. For you, it's kind of been this way forever because you were born into it, and it's gotten worse, but you haven't seen what it could be. So your perspective is a little different than mine. And they were truly the good old days. Now for you guys, they might have been better days, but in my perspective, they're not the good old days. Because the good old days were really good. They were. And I know it's just an old guy saying the same thing all old guys say, but really, technically it was. Okay, number 2, explain verse 5. What are you laughing
I said Mason and I had a lot of fun in the 80s. Those are our good old days.
at? You want to expand on that? Or
Yeah, we were about.
you going to save it for compassion?
We were about 7 or 8. So.
Chasing chickens around the yard.
Yeah.
Oh, my daughters were too.
Running on
Saturday
the
morning
snakes in the
cartoons.
woods that Mason had to carry me over.
What'd you say?
I said, remember Saturday morning cartoons?
Yeah. Yeah, Saturday, I can't watch cartoons anymore.
You can now. There's a warning on them. I turned on Amazon the other day.
Oh,
Turned
yeah.
on Looney Tunes, and there's a full 60
Oh, yeah.
second warning on there.
Oh, yeah.
How these
What?
Jews are terrible and
Looney Tunes,
they
yeah.
shouldn't have been made in their time, but they were. And, yeah.
Yeah, Bugs Bunny bad.
So they
Oh,
abused the
so-
coyote or what?
Well, the first one I watched was about World War II, and there was some pretty comical Duck Hitlers on there. So.
Anyway, moving right along.
This is a very informal Sunday school. Just chime in anytime you want to. Number 5. I'll read it to you. If I can find it. Having a form of godlessness, but denying its power, have nothing to do with them. Talking about people who had infiltrated the church, and the church was having a problem with them. There was a lot of versions of it. There were the Gnostics, there were the Agnostics, there were the Judaizers, there was about a half a dozen or more different people who came in and tried to do different things to either discredit the message of Jesus or to take over the church. And so this is his statement, this is his description concerning that, having a form of godliness, but denying the power, have nothing to do with them. Yeah. What's that mean? The first part of it, having a form of godliness, but denying the power.
That means they do the things that you expect them to do. They do all the right stuff in church. They look good. They look like they know what they're talking about.
Kind of like wolves in sheep's clothing. Yeah. Okay, they're putting on a show on Sunday morning. And they're looking good. But what is their motive? What would be the motive for doing it? I mean, if you want to be a heathen the rest of the week, why not just be a heathen on Sunday? Did you do anything this week that you wouldn't do in church this morning?
Well, yeah.
Wasn't asking
Did you
for
say
that.
it? Did you say any words this week that you won't say in Sunday school this week? Did you say something about somebody this week that you wouldn't want anybody to know in Sunday school this week? I got a couple heads nodding yes. I got a lot of people looking embarrassed, and I don't have anybody saying no. So, you know, Jesus said, Paul said that in Romans, that all the days of the week are the same. We're not supposed to treat Sunday any different than we treat Wednesday. How do you feel about that? Well, it depends on what you did on Wednesday, right? Yeah. All right. So, these people are putting on a show. But why would they do that? Why would you bother to do that?
They want to look good, but they don't want to do what you have to do to be good.
Okay. But when they're having a high old time on Friday night at the bar and they're the life of the party, aren't they also wanting to look good?
Depends on the person that's there.
Yeah. They're trying to impress who's there. And then on church, great point, they're trying to impress who's there. Now, does that indicate in any way that they know they're wrong?
Yes.
Sure it does. They're like chameleons that try to take on the color of whatever leaf they're sitting on or whatever part of the tree they're sitting on. They're trying to blend in. And who are they serving when they do that?
Themselves.
They're serving themselves and they're serving other men. See, even in church when they try to look good, they're serving men. They're not doing it for God. I'm doing it for you. I'm doing so that you will look at me and that you will think that I'm something special. When I do it at Friday night in the bar, I do it for the exact same reason. I want to blend in. I want you to look at me and think I'm something special. And the bottom line is, it's all about me. Who should it be about?
God.
God and
Other people.
Other Christians, I guess, not other people.
no, other people. Should be about other people. And if it was about other people, and if I did believe in God, how would I act in the bar?
Wouldn't be in there.
Wednesday night,
Not necessarily.
Wednesday night at Bible study, Rob told us about a minister who on Friday and Saturday night, not every Friday and Saturday night, but a lot of Friday and Saturday nights, he goes to gay bars. And he doesn't drink and he doesn't get drunk.
And he doesn't mingle. We'll clarify that. That point was brought out too. I was there. Not there.
Me thinketh thou protest. But why does he do that? He does it for the people there. He does it so that he can talk to them. And he says, according to Rob, he says he's got a lot of friends there and they look forward to him coming. And they come and they sit at his table and they talk about different things. And you see, he does it for them. He doesn't do it for himself.
Hallie used to go to the bars in town, and she's one of the most godly women, you know, you ever want to meet. And she would go to the bars and she would talk to the people there, and you know, just, and they were happy to see her when she came in. You know, she just would you know, talk and visit, and she never drank, and she never, you know, she was very, you know, she just loved people.
Yeah, absolutely. my own personal opinion, there ought to be 2 or 3 Christians in every bar on Friday night in this whole state, acting like Christians.
It's not an invitation.
Love
But how many are strong enough to,
I'm sorry?
but how many are strong enough to not, like we talked about last week,
There-
people pull you down
That's the thing, I
when
mean,
you're unevenly
You know,
yoked,
that
you get
chameleon
pulled down.
thing, he doesn't make himself turn the color of the leaf. He lets the leaf control it. You gotta be careful that they're not your peers, they're your mission. You can't identify with what they do, you have to identify with them. You have to love them. That's- So there's that option. Now, that being said, I showed up for church in Somerville, Indiana one morning at 8:30. And the minister called me over and he said, "What were you doing last night?" Well, at 2 o'clock in the morning, Carla Reed called me up and said, "Rick's down at the Point Tavern. I got 2 kids in bed, I can't leave. It's below 0 outside. And the bartender won't give Rick his keys because he's too drunk to drive. Can you go pick him up and take him home?" 2 o'clock in the morning, I thought, yeah, right after I kill him. I climbed out of bed, I got my truck, went and picked him up, took him home. Well, as we were coming out, he couldn't even walk even. So he's staggering around and bumping into things, and so it ended up, I'm walking across the parking lot with his arm across my shoulder, and I'm holding him up, getting him to my truck. And he got me tickled, and I started laughing, and so we're laughing and staggering all over the parking lot at 2 o'clock in the morning. Somebody called my preacher at 7 o'clock and told him that I was at the Point Tavern, falling down drunk. Walking to my car at 2 o'clock in the morning, he pulls me aside and he said, "Before you teach our children Sunday school this morning, I want to know what you were doing last night at 2 o'clock in the morning." And I said, "Well, I had to go over to Point Tavern and pick up Rick Reed and take him home because he was too drunk to drive, and his wife was at home with 2 kids and it was below 0. And so I gave him a ride home." Why? Well, I was called and said that you were drunk and stumbling all over the parking lot at Point Tavern. I said, "Well, I was trying to get him into the truck. He's too drunk to walk, and it might have looked like that." He said, "Well, you know, what you did last night discredited God and embarrassed the church."
I was gonna say the
Yeah.
informant was there.
this is to birth the better in you, apparently.
Yeah, I come up to Bible study.
They want to day it up till.
You know, who was this guy that was watching me stagger all over the parking lot at 2 o'clock in the morning? So I said, well, so at first I thought, oh no. And then I kind of got mad and I said, "Pastor, I had a woman at home with 2 little kids and a man that might have killed himself or froze to death if he had tried to walk home."
Kill somebody
I
else.
said, "What would Jesus have done?" I said, "My conscience is clear. You can believe him or you can believe me." And I walked away. I walked away mad. I walked away mad. We ought to have a little more confidence in each other than that. Today I would have probably laughed it off, but back then I was a little hot when he doubted what I was doing at 2 o'clock on Saturday morning. But bottom line is, if we're not going to have any kind of fellowship, if we're not going to have any contact with them, how can we show them God's love? Yeah. But we have to be an example too. We can't be getting drunk. That doesn't mean you can't drink a beer and you can't drink a glass of wine, but it does mean you can't be drunk. You can't be drunk. All right. So they're there for themselves. They're not there for God. They're there for themselves, and they're there so that they can be seen. What other reason might they do this? Two things rule the world.
There's always the prestige.
Prestige.
There's always the, not only do they want to have people look at them and say, oh, well, you know, they're right, they're good, whatever, for the looks of it, but there's also the fragment of power that kind of comes along with it.
Power. You got it. First, there's a prestige, me, mine, and mine. Okay, I do it for me, mine, and mine. And then there's the power. The two things that most corrupt society in the end is money and power. Those are the two things. The love of money is the root of all evil, that's scriptural. And power corrupts, that's scriptural. Those are the two things that most corrupts a society. You know, when we were poorer, we were better people. Prosperity corrupts us. I grew up without air conditioning, without TV, without video games, without computers, without cell phones.
You were so broke you didn't even have a key for the lock on your front door?
The only thing I had was a key was a passport to the Ark. That's all I had. That was it.
How was that?
Okay, you can look. No, we didn't have any of that stuff, and you know, I don't look back on it and have any regrets. I didn't know I didn't have air conditioner. Nobody else had it either. And we got by. We lived our lives. We went out and played baseball in the sun. We fished on the river. We rode the back of a pickup truck, and nobody died that I know of, that I was familiar with. Now I'm sure it's happened somewhere sometime, but bottom line is, I had a good time when I was a kid, and so did Faith and we made out okay. Sometimes dealing with problems is good for you. Sometimes being inconvenienced by the situation is good for you. Makes you stronger. Number 6. What's number 6 referring to? They are the kind who worm their way into homes and gain control over weak-willed women who are loaded down with sins and are swayed by all kinds of evil desires. Now, he's talking about people who have infiltrated the church, and then he uses this example. He's not describing women, he's describing the guys that are causing the problems. And back then it would have been guys, because women had no power in the church, they had no authority in the church. Matter of fact, a lot of times they sat on one side of the church and the men sat on the other side. Now that wasn't the way God wanted it, but that's the way it was. And so the women, he's not bad-mouthing women here. What he's doing is talking about the men who sometimes do things. What is this a description of? What sin is this a description? Let me read it to you again.
Well, I'm not for sure of the actual, what you would call it, but this is,
Men who worm their way into houses and take control of women.
well, nowadays it would be anybody, men or women, that prey on the gullible,
Yes.
or prey on the weak, and take advantage of them.
The bottom line today would be anybody, because there are no rules.
Right, right.
But what does it describe? It describes what sin. Which one of the 10 Commandments?
The commandments, theft, do not steal.
Yeah, that could be, but isn't it more like adultery? Let me read it to you again. They are the kind of men who worm their way into homes and gain control over weak-willed women. He's talking about adultery. But you got to understand, back then, adultery wasn't just being unfaithful to your spouse. Adultery was just being unfaithful. It could apply to you and your boss because you're embezzling the money. It could apply to you in the church because you're being unfaithful to God. It was a much broader term than our term today. It just meant being unfaithful to something, not being unfaithful. You know, today you say adultery, we only think about one thing in our society. He cheated on his wife. Okay? But in that society, it just meant you cheated. You might have cheated your boss, you might have cheated your friends, you might have cheated your children. You were just an unfaithful person. You couldn't be trusted with that trust. Right? So, he's talking about men in the church who are being unfaithful to something. Who are they being unfaithful to?
God.
God. Most particularly Jesus. Because now this is the Christian church. This isn't the church of the Jews in the Old Testament. This is the Christian church. And so they're being unfaithful to Jesus Christ, the Son of God. Because he gave them a set of rules. He said, this is how you're supposed to act. This is how you're supposed to live. And they weren't doing it. They were acting, like Mason said, they were acting like saints on Sunday, and they were acting like heathens on Friday. They were being unfaithful to God. Well, they're also being unfaithful to God because it's not about serving him, it's about serving themselves. They wanted their sermon to be, they wanted to, if you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and chapter 14, he talks about the gifts of the Spirit. And he makes a point there that no gift is better than any other gift. Well, if you want to make a big splash in the church, what gift you going to want? The janitor?
I thought you was talking about what gift are you gonna give? Oh.
Well, but if you're going to be unfaithful to God and it's all about me, what gift am I going to want?
Pastor.
What?
Preacher. Preacher.
Preacher or teacher or prophet. I want the one where I'm up front and the spotlight's on me. I don't want to mow them on Wednesday when nobody can see. I want to do the, I want to sing the songs. You know, we over the years have had.
Yeah, you do.
I'm not finished. I'm not finished.
We really just want to sing backwards if y'all know. Leave that curtain up all year.
There are singers who sing in church and praise God. And there are singers who sing in church and they're performing.
These two are praising God, definitely.
Oh, thanks, Bonnie.
Definitely.
And think back over the years, do any pop into your head that performed? I don't need any names. But have any been on the stage that were performing? And you can almost tell, can't you? You can tell if it's about me or you can tell if it's about God. Now, Bonnie's right.
What's her face over here?
Bonnie's right. These two are praising God. And a lot of the rest of you have been up front singing and praising God. But there have been people who were up front doing just the opposite. They were praising themselves and how technically correct it was with music or you know, musicians. I'm not going there. I've had too many of them ask me to mouth the words instead of sing.
There's a fine line.
Oh yeah.
Because I play and you know, and I used to get up and open the mic and all that stuff years ago. And when you do it, and people respond in a good way.
And if it's God-led, that'll be the result.
Right, and when you do that in church, you know, pressure's really on you when you're doing it in church, because if you're going somewhere and it's open mic night and you're up there and you're having fun, the lights are low and you can't see them people, you just hear them. You know, and it's just about kicking back and having a good time. And you want to be good, because there again, you want to be liked, you want to be admired, and it's addictive when it actually comes back. When you get up there in front of the church, the lights are on, you see everybody, because they're sitting there going, they're either watching you, or they're flicking their fingernails, they're smacking their kid's hand, telling them to shut up, or, you know, asking their wife for a stick of gum, and she's rifling around getting. That's what happens during song service. Okay. So you don't know when you're up there doing that. Okay, am I good? Am I doing all right? What am I doing? And it gets you flustered.
Yeah.
Really gets you flustered.
Makes you all
And then you wonder.
I'm
And
not
then you
feeling
wonder,
nobody.
why am I doing this? What? So when it comes down to getting up and singing or playing in church, there's one thing that you've got to remember, and there's only one motivation for it. You get up there and you do that for God. If anybody else gets a blessing out of it, great. You're doing it because you're taking that time, hey, I'm singling this out, I'm going to do this for God, and everybody else can just kind of gather up whatever they get. Not a lot of folks do that, because they're looking for that. Oh yeah, I sing in the choir every Sunday. I sing in the choir, or whatever, and it's like it's just one more thing that when people look at you that don't go to your church, and they're like, oh well, he sings in the choir every Sunday, and he does this, and like, yep, I'm good, and people love that stuff.
Now, in light of that, and
It's a thin line. You
I'm
gotta
sure-
watch it.
I'm agreeing with
You gotta watch it.
you. In light of that, have you ever heard somebody say, oh, I mow the lawn and then stop the toilets? You ever heard that person? You ever heard stand up and say, hey, look at me, I unstopped the toilet yesterday? No, that guy's kind of quiet and subtle and sits in the corner. But the bottom line is, in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, it says, all the gifts are equal. Where would the head be without the feet? Where would the hands be without the arms? If we weren't all connected and we weren't all equal, the job wouldn't get done. And to be fair, most of the people that I consider have maybe lost their way. A lot of them are on TV, a lot of them sell records and DVDs. A lot of those people started out right. The lights just got distracted. And once they got distracted and started making a lot of money, man, it became something other than God. It became something other than Jesus. And we need to not be too hard on them, because is there any chance it could happen to us? Is there any chance? I'm sorry?
I said no, because I can't sing or preach or whatever.
No,
I can maybe unstop a toilet.
but you do have a gift. It says that the Holy Spirit gave gifts unto men, and in support of those gifts, you do have a gift. And that gift can become more important than the purpose of the gift. And I think every once in a while we have to stop and we have to ask ourselves, what am I doing and why? And go back to the beginning and maybe start over. Maybe check our path to see if we might have deflected at one point or another, and we need to get back on the path. And if we don't get upstairs, we're gonna be in big trouble. We will start with number 5 next week, and then just proceed on to the chapter.